Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Community Services and Infrastructure Committee meeting of April 3rd, 2019 to order. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given by our clerk this evening, Trish Cernicki. If assistance is required, please see the clerk. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of the town hall. Also, the Town of Lincoln committee and council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. I would like to thank the public for attending this meeting this evening, and I just want to remind everyone of our rules of engagement. Please be respectful while others are speaking, and please refrain from clapping. Delegations will have 5 minutes to speak and are asked to stay focused on the agenda item. And please remember to silence all cellular devices. Roll call. We have all of council here this evening, and we have multiple staff here in attendance. Thank you for being here this evening. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. There are no statutory public meetings on the agenda this evening, and we have no delegations this evening. Consent agenda, we have none. So we'll move right to the regular agenda, and we will be reordering the items. Item 7.8 on the agenda will now be considered the first item, 7.1. Staff will be speaking to the memo and report at the time of consideration. Do all members of council agree with this move to move 7.8 up to 7.1? Thank you very much. So we are now considering item 7.1, which will be CS 07-19, the award of the contract for the Museum and Cultural Center. Ms. McKay, would you like to come? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this is not my first time in front of you presenting on this exciting project, the Museum Development Project, but I can tell you it is one of my proudest moments to stand here and tell you how very incredibly close we are to bringing this project to fruition. So I'm pleased that I've been able to prepare the report recommending the award for the construction to a general contractor who is actually I would say somewhat local from Pelham, and who in our time with them have been able to further reduce the costs from their lowest bid to approximately $400,000 in cost savings. And what we are asking council to approve tonight is the award of the contract to build to Sirianni Construction, and upon award, we will sign off on the first change order for cost reductions, which would bring the cost contract down to $2.88 million. You will see in the project that I take you back to where we were approximately a year ago when we presented the cost range of 3.7 to 3.9 to you. At that time, we had only $3 million in funding secured. So the $2 million that was approved previously by the council in the 2016 capital budget, and the $1 million from our friends of the museum, many of which are with us and behind me this evening in the gallery. We were directed as staff to pause and, quite honestly, find more funding, and that's what we did. So over the course of about 9 months, we were able to secure another $1.3 million, recognizing that the initial costs and the initial budget was based on a construction budget and some archaeological estimates, There were a lot of items that weren't in that budget at the time. There was no project management, there was no FF&E, there was no site studies, there was no interim museum, all of the things that have since been part of this project. So we knew that we needed to raise more funds, and we did that. You will see in the report the breakdown and the ranking of the other general contractors. You will see that we've been working to execute and have successfully executed the contribution agreement with the federal level of government for their support of the $1 million. We've had to present a very detailed actual expenditure and projected cash flow statement to them as part of that. We've also been finishing up with the tender, which after the presentation in January, where we reported to you the $1 million in federal funding, we immediately issued the tender documents the following day. So we've reviewed those, we've gone through the negotiations, and we're in the very preliminary stages of a groundbreaking event planning. So that's pretty much what you will see in the report. In the memo that was prepared today and handed out this evening, I know I've been asked several times when I've been in front of you about the ongoing operations. So once we build this big, beautiful, wonderful facility in Jordan, how are we going to ensure that we continue to bring the visitors in? How are we going to ensure that we can operationalize what we build? So we know we have a fantastic facility that's going to afford us new opportunities. It's going to allow us to pursue rental arrangements for meetings and weddings and special events, corporate events. We will continue to do fundraising. We'll look at expanding our school program because now we'll have indoor space as well in addition to the schoolhouse. We'll look at memberships, special event, and all of these revenue centers, if you will. We've got lots of great connections in the museum industry and elsewhere to tap into. So finding out how things are working for them. We have talked to a number of museums who either rebuilt or expanded their museum operations. Windsor, Elgin, Guelph, Niagara, we've toured around. We've also done some cost comparisons in looking at operational costs. So we realize this new facility is going to be a bit larger. It's going to have the proper environmental controls to house the artifacts, and it's going to cost us a bit more to operate. So we've done some cost comparisons. We've reached out to similar size museums, and we're looking at an increase in operational cost of about 25 to 30%. So we feel that we can bring in additional programming and additional events and visitorship and these other opportunities for revenue generation to offset those costs, much like we do now when we decide on the programming and the events that we are going to run in our museum. We look to cost recovery. So we look for a smaller input that yields us a greater output. And that's how the staff are planning those events. So that is the report and the memo, sort of an overview. I'm trusting you will have some questions for me, so I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director McKay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Rinjema.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. And thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the comprehensive report. You've been before us quite a few times, as you said, so we're all quite familiar with the project. So my question is about the $400,000 in savings. Can you tell me where the savings were identified and how?
Absolutely, through you, Mr. Chair. These were not reductions in the GC's rate or any of the subcontractors' rates. They were actual reductions, were product specifications. So when we look at things like the types of lighting that were proposed, the interior and exterior finishing, things like the soffits, some of the millwork, some of the fascia, flooring finishing, they were. Some of them were small, some of them were the order of 3 to 5 to 10%, and some of them were much larger. So we were able to look at a very comparable, in fact, we think even better, roofing product that actually has a 20-year warranty over the 10-year for the product that was actually specified in the document. So it was an exercise between our prime consultant, who is Plus VG, and the contractor and the town, where we sat down and the contractor was able to identify quite a list, if you will, of items where we could consider reducing. We did not accept all of them, but we did accept the ones that we thought would not change the aesthetic of the building and how great it looks, and none of the changes proposed would impact the function of the building itself or the layout.
Okay, so you're comfortable with all the negotiations that were made and the outcome as a result?
Through you, Mr. Chair, very comfortable.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Injima?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Patriva?
Thank you, Chair Bernay. Just a question with respect to fundraising. So any plans to continue on the fundraising to limit the impact, to continue to find private dollars to go against this, knowing that, you know, we've got a bunch of, not competing projects, but a bunch of projects that are all coming along about the same time. So just your thoughts on that.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we actually have been quietly fundraising. We've had some very good meetings. I can't divulge the results of those meetings, but they were very positive. We feel strongly that with the groundbreaking exercise, that will kick off, and we will be talking about it at that time, a more public community fundraising campaign, probably in smaller donation amounts, and we will have a target, and we will kick that off, and we'll work very hard over the next year to reach our target.
Okay. And in the supplementary report here, the annual fundraising event or gala, will those dollars be used for capital, or will those be used for operating? What's the rationale behind that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the rationale in the report, in the memo today, was more ongoing. So it was looking at a gala that would kick off in the new facility once it opened, and then continue on a regular basis and look at if we wanted to do improvements to the facilities, if there were assets and acquisitions that we needed to make, if there was a great traveling exhibit that we wanted to bring in but was costly, it would be an ongoing. We could consider a gala for capital, but we were sort of positioning it that it would be in the new museum once the museum opened.
No, I understand that. So the funds that are generated from the gala will be more going towards the operational side?
That would be the idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Timmers?
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Bernay. Through you to Ms. McKay. This has been a long time coming. I was really pleased to see the amount of funding that was successful, and kudos to the staff and to everyone and to you, and that was able to secure that extra funding. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to finally breaking ground, and my question about operation, the cost of that was covered. I just wanted to know the actual timeline now. In the very end of the report, it said spring. Is that for groundbreaking?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so we're really hoping to get this award approved this evening and then ratified by council in a couple of weeks. Plan the groundbreaking for May, and the contractor may even want to start a little bit earlier. The groundbreaking will be more for the photo ops and the pictures and such, but he is anxious to get going and get his work underway, as are we, and so yeah, the sooner the better.
As far as the furnishings for the inside of the museum, are we going to be looking to do more fundraising for those costs as well?
Yes, so I can draw to your attention on page 4 of 5 of the report. We actually have a budget right now estimate of between 100 and 200,000 for FF&E. So with what we've presented in expenses, we do have revenues to offset that, but we would still be looking at fundraising to continue.
Very good, thank you.
Councillor Michalak? Okay. Councillor, Mayor Easton.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Shannon, for your work, and to all of the other staff that have worked with you on this. We have quite a few people here tonight, so I'm going to ask some questions that will just hopefully give them a little bit of insight, because I think the $400,000 adjustment, positive adjustment, is worth noting again, because this, when the Fleming Center was built, that was done on a certain model. In this case, this was, I take it that this is this to be considered a considerable, a traditional RFP process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is. So we did pre-qualify general contractors some time ago, and then we issued the tender docs, and it's very common practice to enter into negotiations with the lowest bidder.
Okay. And so prior to that, if I recall, there was a point in time where there was a concern about the costs as they were coming in from the architect, and therefore there was some peer review done. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So following the presentation to council approximately a year ago, there was a peer review. There was actually a Class A cost estimate done that the consultant commissioned, and they hired Hanscom, and that's the amount actually on page 2 of your report, which is $2.8 million, second paragraph there. So that was a year ago. Those cost estimates came back based on the very detailed specifications, and costs have increased, so we did see increases, and we're happy to have been able to negotiate it back down to that range.
Okay, so that's great. And I think it's just worth noting in terms of the level of accountability that's gone on to keep this project within a manageable amount for the community. So given that, could we just hear a little bit about the archaeological? Because that was certainly, I would say that, I wouldn't say that it was never identified as an issue, but it seemed to be very soft-pedaled, and maybe we didn't understand entirely what it meant because the region hadn't brought the hammer down on us. And so all of a sudden, we realized we weren't going to get out from under this archaeological. How much did that cost?
Through you, Mr. Chair, archaeological is sitting slightly over $500,000.
$500,000.
Correct.
So that amount had never, ever seen the light of day in terms of, when you were talking about the original quotes, there were quite a few things that were not included. Should we understand that the archaeological was also not included in that amount?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the archaeological back before I arrived was an unknown. I think there were some very high estimates that were quoted if you had to do archaeological on the entire site. We only did the archaeological on the building site to clear the
Okay.
building site.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of other things. I'm very impressed with the fact that the company has been responsive to further cuts. So I want to just, I just want it noted that there have been some suggested by members of the community that there are local materials that could be included. In fact, there's some very particular pink granite that's available, and there have been some discussions about how that could be incorporated in the building, particularly that original wall that was, I think it was actually the south wall, and it extended out a little bit, and it was quite, it looked like there could be some possibilities there. So if that were the case, will there be an opportunity for the public to be, to have some input into those areas in order to make this more personal and more of a community project as opposed to the architect's project?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think absolutely. I think the building itself and the specifications and our negotiations have taken us to specific products in the build of the building. Having said that, we do have this amazing courtyard that we need to landscape, that we need to develop, a feature wall that we'd like to build. So absolutely, those would be opportunities to entertain those potential donations.
Okay, that's very encouraging. So, street art, we had talked about, I realize that we're not talking about that at the moment, but is that built into these costs somehow? Or are we going to be looking to additional fundraising for that sort of thing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, street art at this point on the site has not been costed into this. I think it's a bigger project and part of a bigger plan for community services to take on.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, just coming down to the end of my questions, we originally talked about a green roof, and there was actually people that were interested in the green roof and interested in funding the green roof. So when you say that the roofing, there was a change in the roofing, not in the quality, but in the cost of the roofing, can the roof be made into a green roof? Can a green roof be accommodated?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say at this point, no, the green roof cannot be accommodated in the cost as presented today, and may require some re-engineering of drawings and specifications to accommodate that.
Okay, that's too bad. I didn't realize that was being lost in this. Okay. I guess I'm very pleased that you brought forward the memo. Thank you very much for that. I think it's really important to know what the plans are, through you, Mr. Chair, for the future. And so people can take this away and think about, what this means and how it's going to help us in the future. Because we're finding out now that there are some very enterprising museums that are actually operating in the black. And with the success that we've had with programming, particularly over the last couple of years, I would like to think that we could get closer to pink, if not black, get close to pink. So I look forward to the groundbreaking, and I just want to thank everyone for their work. I mean, really, I think we started this back in 1980-something or other. So for the few of us that are around, it certainly is very satisfying to see us getting to this point. Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
What have I done? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I too thank you, Shannon, for the memo, because quite honestly, I was feeling as though we didn't have the whole picture when the report first came out, and all we're dealing with is the purchase of the building. We've talked for several years about the programming piece, and I think that's as critical a piece as the actual building. And I think, my question to you is, what will bring visitors back? What in our new museum will bring a visitor back a second time, a third time, and more? I'm going to say that the previous museum was very static, and it was very, one-dimensional. And unless we have something that's a traveling show, or we have something that is going to be of interest, along with the static presentation that we've got, what have we done but put up a new building? So very pleased to see, and I quite honestly would have liked to have talked about this as a separate report, a month or 2 months ago, just to talk about programming. And also on the funding piece, the pause that we put out there was tied specifically to the $2 million budget that we had set aside. And there was a lot of things thrown at us as a group, as far as the archaeological dig, all these things that were expenses. But we still have that $2 million piece sitting there, that hasn't We haven't put a dent in that yet. So, you know, I think it's still on us to, you know, keep working towards whittling that down. I don't know what the target is, you know, you know, 2 million is a big number, you know, even if we got $500,000, but, you know, I'm pleased to see that there's also ongoing funding pursuit, and I'd like to see that formalized, you know, so that it's not sort of, you know, well, we're working with this person or that person, and that could fall through. I'd like to see a more formalized program. I see you got a foundation that we're looking at starting. But just those two pieces were big for me, was the programming piece and also the funding piece. If you could speak to those. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So absolutely, we need to bring people back again and again and again, and we will only do that through innovative, exciting, creative programming, through exhibits that people would typically have to travel hours to potentially see, or even longer. We have an exhibit now that's on display that we're getting visitors from Toronto and beyond to come in and see it, because it's not usually in this area. So building a facility that gives us the space with the environmental controls to really go after some big and exciting traveling exhibits is a priority for the team. Building on programming so that people continue to come back. Building a space for children. So not only was our former museum very small and very static, but there was no children's gallery or children's exhibit in that space. And we see that as a great opportunity because it's such a gap in our community. We don't have a lot of places for families to take their children, right? You might go to St. Catharines or Hamilton or outside of the city, but if we build a strong, fun, exciting children's area within the museum to show to demonstrate what the history of our community is, and play off the escarpment and the lake and all kinds of fun things. And we are going after funding for those types of activities. We will continue to bring families back and continue to bring people back. So we're quite excited and quite committed to the change. The change is what will bring people back. People won't come back if the exhibits stay static. Or if it's the same artifacts that they saw the last time they were in the museum. So that is a priority. We have the space now, or we'll have the space now in the lower level in the storage to not only store the artifacts, to collect new artifacts, but to also process that and work on exhibits and work on what I'm looking for, installations. So where you're installing things and unpacking things, and with the oversized elevator. So that is the intent of the group, in addition to some of the other revenue centers that you're looking at, or that I've identified in the memo. And we can certainly come back to you later this year, having formalized some of those a little bit more. The focus has been, quite honestly, to get to this point and to be able to award this construction. And with the construction underway, we can focus on operationalizing the museum for that same time period.
Good. I'd like to see that. Yeah, I would encourage the staff to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Pachariva.
Thanks, Chair Bernay. And I just want to follow up on Councillor, am I not on?
I don't know, I'm holding.
Turn me on.
I had you.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. And I just want to follow up on Councillor McPherson's comments. And I don't want to have a discussion about operations tonight, but look forward to doing that in the future, because I think it's a miss when we talk about closing on Mondays and Sundays. Councillor Russell and I are both on the library board. And having attended the Library Super Conference last month, I was a bit chagrined to sit around the table and hearing other municipalities, bigger than ours, smaller than ours, talking about going to council to increase their funding to extend their hours on a Sunday. Not everyone works Monday to Friday. We're talking about traveling exhibits. We're talking about increased programming. We're talking about children's area. And I think Sunday is a day that's family day. And you know, so at a later date, we need to have that discussion too, because as we try to say to the library board, you need to be open, first thing they're gonna say, well, the museum's closed. So I don't think we want to venture down that road. So I encourage you to go back and, you know, think of creative ways in order to have this a 7-day-a-week facility. I don't think we want to spend all this money and have the doors locked on a couple days, so.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I agree wholeheartedly, and in fact, the potential operating schedule that we were looking at more closely aligns to what other museums are doing, and if you'll notice, it is only closed in the sort of the off-season when they're not getting the visitors. So the intent from May to September would be absolutely open. We haven't tested this in our own market. This was just a concept that a lot of other museums who don't open Monday because they generally don't get the visitors and the traffic, but look at the weekends, look at the holidays. And we, even in the interim museum in Beamsville, have been staying open on Sundays and in holidays and what have you, and have been getting people who are pleasantly surprised that the museum is open on those days. So absolutely.
Yeah, because that's one of those Monday holidays. It's a missed opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McKay. Before I go to the motion, I just wanted to make a few comments. Thank you for council's questions and deliberation this evening. I think we need to be cognizant of the work that staff has done on the project to get us where we are today. I'm a firm believer, let's celebrate the victories, and we can't forget that we received $1 million in federal funding through the Canadian Cultural Spaces Fund, administrated by the Department of Canadian Heritage, to get us to where we are today. So thank you to Director and all the members of Community Services. So seeing no further discussion, we have a motion to receive for information report CS 07-19 regarding the award of contract to construct the new museum and cultural center. To approve awarding the contract to Sariani Construction, Pelham, Ontario, for the tendered amount of $3,301,000, excluding HST, including all accepted alternative price items per the town's specifications as stipulated in its tender documents. To authorize the clerk and the mayor to sign and seal the contract documents on behalf of the municipality, and to direct staff to upon contract award, implement cost-saving measures with Sariani Construction in the amount of $413,900. This initial change order will be issued after contract documents have been executed and will immediately result in revised construction contract amount of $2,887,100. We will require a mover for the motion. Maryston is our mover. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That is unanimous. So we will now move, just following the rest of the agenda down. So item 7.1 will now become 7.2, PW-07-19, the U-Link Report Pilot Quarterly Update Report. And I believe our CAO would like to speak before we have the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do want to make some opening comments, tell you a brief story, and then turn it over to Director Graham and Sarah. So we are before you tonight to provide one of our regular transit updates. We're going to talk about ridership metrics, operations, the service enhancements we're looking at, and some of the quality improvements. As council is aware, and I'm thrilled that Lincoln is taking a lead in Niagara and definitely across West Niagara in terms of providing intra-municipal transit to our community. As you heard earlier in our workshop, we do look and strive to be a complete, livable, and sustainable community, of which public transit really is one of those core tenets. We started this journey in 2017, November of 2017 specifically, and I think we've come a long way since that pilot project, and thank you to council for your support. One of the things you've always said to us every time we've presented is your desire for us to continue to look at the community needs, to respond accordingly, to look at service enhancement where it makes sense. One of the major enhancements in council's investment was the dedicated resource that looks at our overall transit needs and collaboration. You received an email, or should have received an email some time ago from Director Graham, but I do want to take this opportunity to formally introduce Sarah Haig, our transit coordinator. Sarah does come to us from the city of Thorold, where she was working as a planning assistant with one of her key roles as overseeing transit with the town of Thorold, sorry, the city of Thorold. Prior to the city of Thorold, Sarah worked with Niagara Region as a transit coordinator, supporting Niagara Region Transit and Niagara Specialized Transit Services as it relates to service contract administration, AODA compliance, trending ridership metrics, customer service improvements, etc. She has a Master's of Sustainability from Brock University. She is in the front row there. Sarah, just wave while I continue talking about you. She holds a BA in honors, a BA honors in geography and a GIS postgraduate program. We're thrilled to have Sarah on board, and I can tell you, and Director Graham can speak to this as well, the asset that she is to us, the benefits that she's provided, and the expertise she's brought to this role. So I said at the beginning of my comments that I do like to tell stories, and I like to share stories. So I'm going to tell you about a lady by the name of Olga. She's a mom of a regular family that our staff often refer to as the first family. And I joked with the mayor when I said I was going to tell a story that we often refer to Olga as the first family because the mayor often talks to me about some of our other first families. She's referred to as the first family by our recreation staff as they were the first to purchase the family seasonal pass at a recent open house free skate. And they wished that the bus would pick up people along Highway 8. That's what we heard from them. So that it could go to our recreational facilities because she doesn't drive. She has no way of getting to facilities, but she still wants to give her children the opportunities that sometimes we take for granted. She tries to access all of our programming with her 2 young children. So staff were very pleased very recently to talk to her about ULink and to inform her that we are going to be starting flag stops. And again, Sarah and David will be speaking to that. And we're going to be starting this service along Highway 8 with increasing stops to our recreational facilities. From what I'm told, she was excited, she was pleased, she was incredibly euphoric with this news. So I've always said to you, this is why we do and deliver services. It's not necessarily just because we like to deliver transit. It's about the people we serve. It's about getting them to where they need to go. It's about those that don't have necessarily maybe some of the same opportunities a lot of us in this room have for whatever reason. So Olga, her 2 children are one of those families. I often look for stories specifically around transit, and I think every time we present, I try to find one to share with you. So we provide services to increase access for our community and to improve the quality of life for our families. So we are excited tonight to share some updates. The next steps as it relates to intermunicipal transit will also be touched upon, as well as some updates in terms of West Niagara and transit across the western part of our region. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the experts on this, so Sarah and Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Krikopoulos. Staff will now provide us a presentation.
Through Mr. Chairman, thanks, Mike, for the introduction. So the purpose of this presentation is we want to share an update with council on ULink, the transit service. And this is something that we want to do on a quarterly basis. So a little bit of background. The pilot started back in November of 2017, and the intention to introduce and expose residents to local public transit. And some of the guiding principles that really stand behind this are gauge citizen and community need, desire, and readiness for transit, increased mobility right across Lincoln. support Lincoln as a complete and sustainable community, and that's one of our really key ones. Facilitate economic development and support workforce development, contribute to a higher quality of life for our residents, and also to support the introduction of GO for the future train service that's coming to Lincoln. So in September of 2018, Council approved extending the service contract with BTS Network for 2019. So that's our service provider who provides the bus service. In principle, Council approved transitioning from the pilot to a permanent service. We also, as part of that, a 3-year contract for our transit coordinator to support ULink service. Given that we're introducing a new service to our community, we need to resource that. And Council also approved a rider fare to come into effect in 2019, and basically for the town to be able to qualify for provincial gas tax funding to help offset our operating costs. So we'd like to share a few metrics with council. There's more details in your actual report, but these are kind of the high-level summaries. So in 2018, we had 24 riders of ULink. So that's really impressive for our first year. And again, just remember, we're trying to get our community used to transit, trying to get our community to understand that we have transit and going through that. So we're really impressed with 2,400 riders. Kind of break that down further, 49% are adults, 36% are seniors, and 15% are youth. So, you know, it's fairly balanced. We don't have one sector that's really skewed. So again, we're happy to see that. It's a good indicator for your transit being a little more sustainable because you're appealing to multiple groups, not just one. So that's a good metric to see. Some of our most popular stops, the Fleming Center, and again, that's our hub. So that's where everything kind of starts from. So that's an important stop. Foodland and Vineland, that's a very popular stop for our transit system. The Heritage Village community in Vineland, we get a lot of usage, a lot of riders from that community. And the GO Bus stop at the GO Bus parking lot here in Beansville. There's a lot of demand at that stop as well. Of our riders, about 71% are women. And the most popular route we have right now is referred to as Route 2, but it's basically the northern Beansville route that goes down Ontario Street to the GO station out Bartlett Road. So that route there is so far the most popular route that we've seen with our metrics. So quality improvement, again, we're very happy to have Sarah with us. She's doing an excellent job, and it really shows the importance of why we really need a resource here to really give ULink the focus it needs. Big part of Sarah's job is contract management with our service providers, so continuing to provide contract management, looking at where we can continue to improve that, the overall operations, ridership, looking at our metrics, what we're seeing, continuing to look at our routes and our schedules, and seeing how best we can refine those. So we've been doing a lot of that in the background. And also customer service, looking at continuing to respond to rider requests, concerns, where people would like to have bus service and additional stops, so that's a really big piece of it. And also, and you'll hear about it in a future slide coming up here, Sarah is providing a lot of support representing the town at the region. So we're going to talk about that later, but with the Intermunicipal Transit Working Group, and there's a lot happening at that site as well. So I'll have Sarah come up, and she's going to give a little more detail around the quality improvements that we're recommending.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so a big part of what I've been working on is just improving the overall friendliness and accessibility of our materials for the ULink service. So we've overhauled our brochure. We updated it with information to be more relevant to the service changes that we've implemented already, which is the fare increase from free to $1, the flag stop route, and our schedule changing a little bit. We've created a new webpage with a lot more information to make it a lot easier for individuals to access the information. So we've improved our route maps, we've implemented some rider policies and frequently asked questions, which we'll continue to update. So that will answer a lot of the questions that riders might have about how to use the service and what they can and can't do on the bus. A big thing that have been hearing from a lot of individuals is they want to get to other municipalities, and so right now our only connection is through the GO Bus. So we have changed our schedule by just 5 minutes, and that allows 4 additional connections to the GO Bus so that riders can connect to Burlington and St. Catharines. So that's very exciting and has started this week. In addition to that, I'm getting all of our information available on trip planners. So those are tools that riders can use to help them plan their route. So Google Maps, for example, you can put in where you're starting, where you're going, and it will tell you how to get there using the bus. Transit app is one that you can use from a cell phone. So on the go, if they're on the side of the road, not really sure how to use it, all of the route information is there. It will tell you how to get to the closest stop, when the bus is coming, and where it'll take you. And then additionally, we are looking at implementing 8 new bus stops starting this summer. So they, for the most part, are located along the existing routes, so they should be able to be encompassed within the existing schedule and the existing budget. So, starting this week also, we have implemented the flag stop. So that is located along King Street there between Beamsville and Vineland. So right now there's about 7 or 8 kilometers where there's no bus stops. Bit of an issue for people who live and work along that location. We have a big community of migrant workers that live and work at farms along that road and would like to use the bus to get to groceries and things, but it's just too far. There's no stops for them to do that. So what we've done is we've implemented a flag stop. So anywhere along that route, you can stand on the side of the road in a safe location, wave to the driver, and they will let you on the bus so they can take you into town. So they're very excited about that. So the 8 stops that we are adding this summer, we have 4 in Beamsville. So one at the Wendy's McDonald's area near the QEW, one at the Tim Hortons, we have a new one at the Lincoln Community Center, and at Calvary Gospel Church. So that just kind of fills in some of the gaps of where the route already goes, but doesn't stop frequently enough. We have 2 new ones in Vinelands with the Southridge Community Church and 20 Valley Community Church, also basically along the existing route, just adding a few more stops to make it more accessible, and 2 more stops in Jordan. So we will deviate the route here. We'll extend it to add Village of Hope and Jordan Lions Park, and then loop back around to our stop at Inn on the 20. For the summer service, we've also implemented some changes there. We're going to be implementing some changes. So in the summer, we offer the service, the existing service as it is, and then on Saturdays, just between July and August, we also offer the service. Last year, it ran the same as it did during the rest of the year, but just 3 times a day. So what we're proposing for this summer is to combine routes 1 and 2, run it 4 times a day with an extra stop at Hillary Bald Park. So we have a splash pad there and we want people to be able to access that. And then Route 3 will run 4 times a day also, and 3 times a day we will extend it to go to Charles Daly Park in Jordan. Okay, so as Dave had mentioned, on Monday we implemented a fare of $1. Transit passes are also available at Fleming Center, Town Hall, the museum, and from the driver on the bus. So you can get a card that is valid for 11 rides. You can pay $10 for that, so you get 1 free ride. So far, 3 days, it has been very well received. We haven't received any complaints yet, so that's great. And this is a very important step to make us eligible to receive provincial gas tax funding. So as Dave had mentioned, that can cover up to 75% of our operating expenses, and this was a requirement from the province in order to be eligible to receive that funding. Okay, so a quick update on the intermunicipal transit side. So this is very important also for our residents to be able to connect to other municipalities. So the Niagara Region approved $13.9 million in capital funding for the 2019-2020 intermunicipal transit service. This includes improvements to their existing routes as well as some new routes. So the routes that are proposed to come to West Niagara, there's one that will connect Grimsby and Beamsville, and one that will connect Beamsville and St. Catharines. So there's not a lot of details around them yet. They're looking at potentially an on-demand service, so it won't be a fixed bus that will run no matter what. It's more of a dial-a-ride sort of thing, so someone will ask for the bus to come, it will pick them up and connect them to either the closest transit hub or the route along the way. So our next steps, as Dave had mentioned, we are working very closely with the Intermunicipal Transit Working Group. So this is a group with representatives from all 12, actually all 13 municipalities in Niagara. Our main focus is to make a seamless user experience for transit riders. So we want to get as many of our policies aligned as possible. So one of them is a common fare strategy. So our target is to achieve this by September 2020 or January 2021. And what that is they want every transit system in Niagara to have the same cost as well as fare media available. So fare passes, 10 ride cards, monthly passes, they want that to be consistent across all systems by that time frame. The next one is a central call center. So they ideally want there to be one call center where no matter what municipality you're in, if you need some information about transit, you call it up and that person will have information on every transit system in Niagara. Our interim step is to have one phone number that will then connect to all of the other municipalities. So for example, 1-800-TRANSIT, you call that up, it'll give you options for each transit system and then it will connect to those systems. We are also looking at, like I mentioned, the on-demand transit options. So on-demand will allow us to reach a broader service areas and service some of those municipalities and rural spots that we just can't reach right now. So we are working with the region closely on that, and as well as testing the Remix software, which will improve our ability to plan our routes in a more efficient manner. So one of the next things we will be working on is implementing these changes that I've mentioned, implementing the summer route, and monitoring that to see how that goes, if we need to make any changes to it. We will be promoting this ongoing, so I still hear from people that weren't aware that we have a transit system, so still working on getting the word out there so that everyone knows about it and can use it. And later this year, we will bring a report and update back to council. So thank you very much, and we'd be happy to field any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Graham and Sarah, for your presentation. So first up, I have Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sarah, and nice to meet you, and Dave. A couple of questions. The flag stop, great idea, and you mentioned in your report for the person to be going to an area of safety. So does that mean that the bus would potentially not stop unless there's a cross road where the bus could pull off? Because I think you're talking about a fairly high-speed area there.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So the driver would have to have a little bit of discretion here. He wouldn't pass the person. I would say he would find the safest spot along that route closest to the individual and allow them to get on the bus. So if the exact location that the person was standing wasn't quite safe, he may stop a little up the road and then wait for the rider to get to the bus.
Okay. And with the flag stops, so how are we communicating that out to those that would use it?
So through you, Mr. Chairman. So this was brought up basically through my contact at Southridge Community Church. So they have a group of migrant workers, and he explained to me their situation and how a large majority of them live and work at farms along that area, and they would love to use the bus to do their grocery shopping and things like that. And I just explained how it's very difficult to implement actual stops along that route. There's not really any logical locations to have one. And I know that flag stops work in some rural areas of other municipalities in Niagara. So that was the route we went. He will be communicating that to his group, his community. So it is now in the brochure. The new brochure that we came out with for the changes includes the flag stop. It shows the area that the flag stop is valid and basically how to use it, just flag down the driver. So it is in our communication materials, and the group that kind of wanted it most will be communicated through them.
Good, and if I may, Mr. Chair, I hope it works, and I hope you can then take it to Jordan down to 9th Street, so we can cover that as well. But question on your change or your updating of information. What is available, or what will be available at the bus stops?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so yeah, at this current time, it's just a bus stop. There's not schedule information. As we are bringing updates fairly frequently, it's not very efficient to have that material kind of printed and posted at the stops. Once everything is a little more formalized, I would like to have schedules printed at each stop. Right now, what we are working on is, like I said, getting all of that information updated on our transit apps, and then each stop sign will have a stop number, and that will correlate to the information available on our website and on the transit apps, which will help a little bit.
I think it's a miss today that, we don't have a map, at the bus stop of the town and all the bus routes, and that we don't have schedule information. It's a thing with me that, I think we gotta get there. If I may, Mr. Chair,
Councilor McPherson, just before we go on, I'm just going to jump in. I see our Chief Communications Officer, Carrie
Okay.
Beatty, I think wants to chime in on one of your questions. So I'm going to go to Carrie Beatty.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. To answer specifically the councillor's question, so we had budgeted actually for signs to attach at each stop. For this, we've been waiting to kind of get a more settled schedule. So our plan with some of the communications is to look at what that product will be for weather durability, et cetera. So that is our plan, councillor. And in all fairness to Sarah, she's still sort of getting oriented to where we're at and some of the things that we had put in for this year's budget. But that was incorporated into the infrastructure line of our budget. The other piece being in terms of the communications that you asked, with the addition of the flag stop, we've been brainstorming some different opportunities, looking at maybe doing a targeted mail to that specific area to inform them. So we're still looking at some options of how we can best promote that, and we're always looking for opportunities. And we're going to be doing a lot more activities relating to promotional now that we have that route set a bit more, and it started April 1st, and we just wanted to provide the update to council first before we started communicating it out externally.
And just a comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. So on the intermunicipal transit, if I understood what you said, it's going to be on demand, which I have a concern with. Because I think we're gonna ask you, Sarah, to be phoning them every day so that they come out here. But it just doesn't seem like a commitment of any kind. And to me, the success of our transit program could be tied in the future directly to that intermunicipal transit system. So not to have a regular route come out here, and I understand we're early on, but it just seems, like they're not really committed.
So through you, Mr. Chair, they're looking, there are no details yet. That's just an idea that they had. We will work with them to make sure that whatever option comes out of it is something that works for our community as well. I believe the reason they want it to be more of an on-demand is it will allow coverage of a greater area, so it won't diminish the service available. It will make it available to more people. That's the intention. So more people will be able to access it, because if they do a fixed route, it will go along a single road and not deviate from that. So with our spread out population, it doesn't allow access to it for a lot of people. So if they do it on demand, more people can access it is kind of the theory, but we will work through that with the region.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
And just a final comment, I see that they want to move to a single fare across the region, which, should we be concerned about that? Is that going to take our $1 to $3 or $5, or is that something to be concerned about?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, originally the plan for that was actually to be implemented by this September. I explained to them that that was not going to be possible for Lincoln, that we implemented a $1 fare just starting now, and that we understand that it will likely incrementally increase, but a $3 fare is kind of cost prohibitive for some of our riders. What the plan is would be a $3 cash fare once we get to that point. So January 2021, that is the goal that the working group is proposing. So it would be something that would come to council. All local municipalities would have to agree to it. So it's a report that we would bring to council, and you would have the opportunity to discuss and vote on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sarah.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenters. Welcome, Sarah, first off. I know we're still very early days in our ULink and our transit system, and I'm glad to see that we're taking a lot of measures to try to increase ridership. And I think just by judging through the presentation and some discussions we've had informally, that the aim really is that to increase that ridership so we get more value for the cost. And I know, again, 2018, it was still a learning year, and we were still trying to gather as much data and refining routes and destinations and whatnot. But again, just being one of the newer counselors, when I look at the cost versus ridership, it makes me uncomfortable to look at that metric. So anything we can do to get that ridership up, again, I think is obviously a huge benefit. I'm just wondering, what kind of success measurements do you have? This might be a little bit too early for you, Sarah, but to see how these changes are having a net benefit. It looks like the costs are going to be relatively stabilized in the 2019 budget, but what kind of growth are we expecting for this year as far as ridership goes?
Through Mr. Chairman, a good question. I mean, I think the biggest thing right now is we're still trying to get people to try it and have our community understand that we have this service and getting that ridership in the bus. And I think, you know, when we compare ourselves to other municipalities who have started transit systems, we've done well. I know sometimes it doesn't maybe sound like a lot of people on the bus, but we've only been at it 1 year, and when we compare ourselves to some other municipalities that we do talk to, it does take a long time to build a ridership when you don't have transit in your community. So I think, like I say, when we compare ourselves to others, we've been doing well to get the ridership that we have to date. And again, you know, it's pretty foundational too in terms of long term. And I mean, we want to be able to say we have transit. The region is very interested that they can plug in, or we can plug into intermunicipal concepts. We're the only West Niagara municipality that offers transit, so we can really leverage the region here to kind of be a catalyst to get intermunicipal transit for Lincoln. And again, that'll help be the success of our system as well, if we can get those interconnections. And our whole mandate is trying to continue to build transit and interconnections as we look down the road towards the GO train in the future, so.
One further question, Mr. Chair, either to Director Graham or maybe to staff. Do we see that provincial gas tax grant being the same amount going forward? Will that be something that we can expect year after year after year? Just trying to see how the math is all going to work out.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, maybe Mike might want to say something. I'll just say a couple comments. I mean, At this point, we think it's gonna be fairly stabilized, but it does depend on the government at that point in time. So I don't know, Mike, if you have any other comments you'd like to share?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think just, you know, a quick comment to add to what Director Graham said. I think some of that will be dependent, both in terms of an election that's forthcoming at the end of this year and how either this current federal government or a future federal government decides to look at gas tax and the promotion or the investment in transit. We are seeing, I think, more and more, even at a provincial level, this government also talk about investments in transit, and some of that is through uploading and other type of service enhancements, but definitely something we anticipate will stay fairly consistent, and we will continue to look for opportunities and ways, now that we have more of a permanent system, to look for that sustainable funding. One of the things that we did bring forward when we looked at making this program sustainable was just that commitment to council that we'll continue to look for investment, that we'll continue to look for funding, and should any of that change, we will be back before you, I think, having that conversation. If I can, through the chair, just make a brief comment. Councillor, I mean, you highlighted, I think, you know, one of those areas of concern you had around ridership, and I think that's always something that we're cognizant of in terms of looking at ridership. And, you know, I think one of the comments that staff made, that I know I made early on when we talked about transit, is that it is a subsidized service. It's a subsidized service even in those very successful municipalities, whether you look at Toronto, other GTHA communities where they're subsidizing it to the tune of 50%. So it is a service that often is there from a service standpoint. We absolutely try to look at that subsidization piece so that we're not subsidizing more than we should. But even those successful systems that have been around 100 years still find it challenging. So it's a theoretical yet more difficult conversation to have. But absolutely, we're cognizant of that, and we'll continue to look at funding options.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may just add to that, I've been working with our Director of Finance, which we plan to bring a report back to council in the next month or two. We have met with the region and are investigating options to joint report our statistics with the region so that our funding will be more consistent. So the way you report gas tax, it can allow for fluctuations year over year, but if we investigate this option with the region, it should make it more consistent so that value will remain the same. It's still reliant on the provincial government, of course, and how they align their funding, but that's something that you can look forward to in the next month or two.
Thank you. Councillor Patriva.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. You know what? It makes me very happy to be sitting here tonight, probably 4 years to the day that Councillor McPherson, Councillor Brunet, Councillor Njima, and myself attended a transit workshop in Grimsby. And they talked about doing a bus service. And they talked about linking the municipalities. And Bradford West Gwillimbury was a case study that they used. And their first year ridership was hundreds, not thousands, hundreds. So welcome, Sarah. Welcome, a fellow geography major. I appreciate that. You are proof that, yes, you can get a job in your field, so kudos to you. With respect to increasing the ridership, I think we're going to see the change just by lining up the GO bus stops, right? Because that was a barrier. So you're not going to travel to the GO bus, even though you need it, if you have to wait 50 minutes. So I think that will lead us somewhere. The whole cost ridership question, I know our CAO jumped into that. But you know what? It's a number of things that we deliver in the municipality: arenas, swimming pools, museums, sports fields. They're all a social service that we deliver to our community to make us a complete community. It's just the cost of doing business. They're not money makers, but they're a necessity. I mean, I think we're doing the right thing when we see that the stop on Union is the 5th largest spot. So that's telling me that we're giving access to workers in our community to jobs that they may not have if we didn't have this service. So I mean, as things get refined and we go forward, I think there's the only way to go is up. I do express a little reservation when it comes to the regional side, and that you know, call, I'm going to come pick you up. That to me is theory versus practicality or need. And I don't want to see the bulk of that funding eaten up with the municipalities of St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Welland that already have regional transit, that already have their own transit systems, to add additional buses to that network. What it needs to do is there needs to be a dedicated route coming out to West Niagara. And I think one of the things, too, that we need to look at is bus shelters. And this would solve a lot of problems. Our ridership dips in the winter. You just have a drive around the town. There's this much snow on the bus benches. No one's going to sit out there with the wind swirling. We need to get some bus shelters put in. We've got a year. We've got a lot of our stops established. Bus shelter. Then inside the bus shelter, you've got the map and the times and the routes, and then you get some buy-in. And I think one of the opportunities, too, that we might have is a stop at the YMCA. I know we're going to cross over the municipal boundary right now, but that's, swimming programs, day camps, moms and dads going there that may not have the access, and it's a subsidized facility for those that need it, and I think that's a great opportunity. Councilor McPherson mentioned swinging it to the east end. I think we've got an opportunity to swing it to the west as well. And then my question would be, after all of that, have we had any discussion with Grimsby? Because I see in their recently released budget that they're not going down transit yet. And we jumped in feet first on this because of Metrolinx and the stop to go and providing that internal ridership to say, you know what, go train, we're ready. But ultimately, if the region comes in with this dedicated route, I think that's the panacea to the connection to those further west. But just if you wouldn't mind commenting, Sarah, on that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll just start back at the beginning, if I may. So in terms of the on-demand service, it would be for a select area. So St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Welland would not be part of that. It would be specific to the areas that basically don't have transit right now. In terms of Grimsby, I believe before I started, there had been some discussions with them. As far as I know, they didn't go very far. The region is kind of trying to get the local municipalities out of the connecting game. That is what the region's intent is for them to make those connections across municipalities. But it is, I agree, it is an important stop that I think a lot of our residents would like to connect to. And so we will continue to work with the region to see how that's possible and if it would be us connecting out there or if it would be a stop that they would be willing to add.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Through to Sarah and Dave, thank you very much. This is a great report. I'm very excited. I love talking about ULink, and to see it happen in our town was just very exciting. I get excited every time I wave at the bus. But I do. I wave at Robert all the time. As far as the flagging the bus, fantastic. I think we should be flagging the bus wherever possible. When I grew up here, I'm gonna tell a story, Mike. When I used to flag down the Canada Coach bus at the end of the driveway because there was no school bus at the time, and I would take it to school, to Beamsville High School. I would take it to downtown Beamsville and then walk down to the school. But we would just stand on the side of the road and you'd see the bus and you'd put your hand up and they would stop and pick you up for 50 cents. So I'm dating myself a little bit. But there's my story. So it feels like we're going full circle. And I also feel like, if we can get that intermunicipal transit, it absolutely has to be a designated route. It needs to come down King just like it did for 50 years with the Canada Coach, and we have a lot more people living here now. So we bring that designated route down King. What that means for us is our U-Link can now stop traveling along King, and maybe it can go elsewhere, up over the mountain. Like, that's my thought, is how do we get it up over the mountain? So I do have a question in here. So as far as the gas tax dollars, if we bring in another bus, does that mean we double our gas tax dollars, or am I dreaming a little bit? Or am I hopeful?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So provincial gas tax funding eligibility is based on operating costs. So as our costs increase, our eligibility for funding will also increase. It is maxed at 75% of the operating costs. So we will never recover all of our costs, but as our costs go up, our eligibility for funding will increase. Before the Ford government, the provincial gas tax funding was set to double from 2 cents a liter to 4 cents a liter. So we're still waiting. I believe the budget was supposed to be announced today, actually, at the provincial level. So we're waiting on answers to that and if that kind of piece is included in that budget or not. But for now, we're going on the basis that it's still 2 cents. So as our expenses increase, so will.
So that was a little bit of a yes to me. That sounded really positive in my
Yes.
mind.
Yes.
So it's not a no, it's a maybe.
Yes.
Okay, so, and just one other point. You know, the U-Link is a service. We provide a lot of services. It's not a moneymaker. It's just like, as Councillor Pachariva said, it's parks and it's recreation facilities and those kinds of services are subsidized, so I get that. U-Link is not a moneymaker, and to have 2,400 riders is incredible. And I think we've done a fantastic job, and other municipalities could definitely look to us and see what we're doing, because I think we're doing it right, and we're very successful in what we're doing. And just one other quick comment is the stop at Village of Hope. Really happy to see that, so. Oh, I have one other, sorry, Chair Brunei. I tell you, I'm very passionate about U-Link. One other comment I wanted to say about the service that we're providing in our town. When the medical center on Hickson the doctors are reporting that new babies are coming in for their well baby checks. They're actually making their appointments because mom can now get on the U-Link and bring the baby to the appointment. And before the U-Link, there were a lot of cancellations. So, I mean, that is a definite impact in the health and well-being of our community. So, thank you.
Councillor Mikluck.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Great to meet you, Sarah. First-term councillor, so a lot of these U-Link decisions, a lot of these U-Link programs are before my time. Just curious if I could ask Director Dave, had we done, if any or much research on on-demand transportation similar to what they do in Innisfil?
Through Mr. Chairman, yes, we did, and at the time, it was something we didn't really want to adopt or go down. I think, moving forward, we're looking at, there's these on-demand concepts that you can supplement what we're doing already. So, I mean, we are looking at, different ideas on how we can continue to grow our current system, and we'll be sharing that back with council. So, I mean, whether we're expanding the bus, do we look at on-demand for certain areas in the rural areas? So there's different options that we are evaluating, I guess, but.
The reason why I ask that is, like, I have to be honest, when it's a second year in and your ridership is actually decreasing, call it the weather, call it what you may, that concerns me a little bit now, and that's based on a free ride. The dollar fee that was imposed or calculated, how was that number calculated in relevance or relation to which other municipalities or anywhere?
Through Mr. Chairman, so the whole idea, we've got to charge some type of a fare to get gas tax eligibility. So you can't get gas tax funding if you're not charging some type of a fare to recoup some of your operational costs. So you have to charge a fare. Again, we're looking at our service, it is small, it is limited. we didn't feel it should be $3 in comparison to what your experience could be in St. Catharines, right? So we're trying to be realistic. We want to be incremental with how we're growing the fair. So, I mean, as our service expands and has more opportunities for riders, and I think we'll be looking at incrementally raising our fare.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is earlier in the year, I had asked when we were going to impose a fare, when we were going to do this. And when I saw that it was $1, I have to be honest, Pelham is $3, St. Catharines is $3, Welland $3, everyone is $3, and $1 to me seemed a little light. Now, that being said, we are using, who is keeping stats on the ridership? Who's responsible for counting the riders that use this ULink service?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so the driver on the bus does collect the statistics of who's riding each day and then sends them to me.
Okay. So this is what concerns me a little bit, is that it's a contracted driver, where his charge is $140,000, less $500. Now, the thing that concerns me is that at $1 a ride, there could be a possibility, which highly unlikely, of padding the numbers to suit to make the appearance that the ridership is higher than it possibly is, in order to maintain that contract. That's what concerns me a little bit with the $1 charge. I was hoping to find out what the actual ridership would be moving forward. And another question I have with regards to the route calculations or the stop calculations, what is the typical, how far is a person willing to walk to a bus stop?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's calculated to be about 500 meters. So when we're doing our bus stops, I try to make them about a 400 meter walk. That's why we added a few. There are some routes where we have a much greater distance than that. So I'm trying to kind of fill in those stops with approximately a 400 meter walking distance.
Okay. And then, one more question. Has there ever been thought of having a stop at City Hall?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, there has. I did consider that as part of these additions. Due to some safety concerns, as well as some timing, it was not included in this report. There's no sidewalks along Bartlett Street, and with our frequency right now, you would have to wait about 2 hours once you got here to get back on the bus. Most people's business here at Town Hall wouldn't take that long, and so they may try to walk somewhere else, and it's just not really a safe place to walk right now.
And then, if I may, Chair, I have one more question. I tried calling. What happens currently if I'm at a bus stop or I'm not sure the bus is coming, or when I tried calling yourself and there was no answer. Now, that being said, is there a way possibly to pass that to a different phone or a contact? Should I be waiting at a bus stop and nobody is there to answer a question if the bus is coming, is it canceled, or that sort of information? Is there a way to forward that phone call to an available assistant or individual?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, ideally, yes, I think there should be a backup. Right now, you're right, the calls go to me. They should be forwarded to my cell phone if I'm not at my desk, but I have been having some glitches with that this week. Yeah, once we're set up a little farther, maybe it can default to someone else if my phone doesn't pick up. I'll have to look into
Okay.
that a little further for you.
That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, we're certainly making progress, and I think there's been lots of very good questions tonight. I do want to repeat, and I know that this has been repeated by councilors, that This is a service that is part of a complete community. It is also a determinant of health, the availability and access to public transportation. And the service is not for those who will never use it. We are subsidizing this service for the people that the CAO was talking about, and others, the elderly, and many others who often fill these chambers when they know that these discussions are taking place. So our focus is on the people that need this service, who can't get to work, who can't get to school, or move around to do the most simplest of life tasks, unless there's bus service. We have never done, and I have never seen, in all the time I've been associated with the town, an attempt to determine costs on a per capita basis for any service that we provide. We don't operate the arenas that way. We don't operate the parks that way, as Councillor Pachariva has noted. And I don't think that it ever will be done. It is not the way it is done. So we either decide, and maybe we need to go back to this. I'm not getting a feeling that that there is any idea at all that we should discontinue this service, but we should get it straight in our heads that we are providing this service for those who would never be able to get to where they needed to in the future. It is extremely important to them. I think the Union Road piece is quite important, because there was someone who advocated for the employees there. It turned out to be much busier than I ever expected. So Mr. Chairman, I think that we need to bear down on this a bit, because if along the line there's going to be the constant argument, and I've heard all of these arguments at the region, believe me, about how many people are in the buses, then it's a lost argument. We'll never ever accept that this is an important service for our community. Now, having said that, we do have to be concerned about costs, and I believe that we do need to be concerned, Mr. Chairman, about how the region is going about their piece of it. So I've got a couple of questions about, I have a question about the fair and children during the summer, and the idea that we're going to have a skate park, and $1 isn't very much unless you've got 3 children or 4 children. So did you give any consideration to the fair for school-age children?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, yes. Right now, at $1, we thought that was accessible for most people. In discussions with the Intermunicipal Transit Working Group, as I mentioned, they are working towards common fare strategies and common strategies across the board. One of them that has been broached is children under 12 are free. So right now we have children under 6 are free, which is what most transit systems have. Welland is the only one in Niagara that has children under 12 are free with a fare-paying adult. So if a child of 12 rides by themselves, they would pay a small fee. But if a parent of 4 kids rides, the parent would pay, the children would all be free.
Okay.
So that is something that I believe we could be supportive of in the future.
Okay, that's very good. And Mr. Chairman, through you, Sarah, could you explain to me the relationship between the fare, the $3 fare, which exists in other communities, and the principle of a seamless transfer? Because I've heard this talked about quite a bit.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So right now, most of the local municipalities carry a $3 fee, and the Niagara region carries a $6 fee. And so what that allows you to do, so the systems that are connected to the region, you can pay a $6 fee on the local bus, and that will allow you to transfer to as many systems that you need to get to your destination. So you wouldn't actually pay the $3 fee to, let's say, Welland, and then pay again in St. Catharines. You could pay your $6 intermunicipal fee in Welland, and that would connect you to the regional bus and to any other local bus that you would need.
Okay, so if I left Beamsville, the Fleming Center, and I paid $3 fare, I could go to St. Catharines and get the bus on Fourth Avenue to go downtown to get up to Brock University, and that would cost me $3, some kind of routing like that. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so that would be $6. So the $3 consistency is within a municipality only, so the intra-municipal, they want all the locals to have the same fare within their community. And to travel between municipalities would also, it would be consistent, so $6 would get you from your municipality to any other municipality connected to the system.
Okay, all right. All right, so that's the way we're looking at it for the future. Okay, through you, Mr. Chairman, then, I want to agree with Councillor Timmers. When we were meeting earlier about the active transportation with the consultants, I actually find, Mr. Chairman, that this document is even more progressive than what we were talking about with the consultant. And we had this discussion about the region coming along Regional 81 and the U-Link operating on the Fly Road, Regional 73, I guess it is. So, because there may be people that live in Tintern or up on Spring Creek Road that may have to come down using an on-demand ride and then pick up the bus that comes down into the main system in Camden, or even at the top of Mountain Street and Fly Road. So I think that, that's something to consider in order for us to reach the largest number of people that we possibly can, because that whole business of, getting the ridership to the maximum that we can of those people who really need the service is going to be pretty important. Otherwise, we're going to continue on with this argument about it's too costly. So, all in all, I'm pretty happy with the progress, and I'm very pleased to see that, I'm happy that you're here, Sarah, because a lot of very good work was done off the end of the desk. It's what got it going. I think we're pretty grateful to staff that they were willing to do that. It was very hard. Now you realize that you need a different level of expertise and somebody who can really dedicate their time. We certainly won't have any arguments in the future. If we have to make any tough decisions, it won't be because we didn't have a knowledgeable person who had the time to do the work. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Could you turn your mic off, Mayor, please? Councillor Rinjima.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. Thank you for the presentation. We've heard a lot of good discussion tonight. And one thing we've touched on, but maybe not touched on thoroughly, is the idea, so yes, we want to get people to the GO station. We want to promote our GO bus use and continue to feed into it. We want to provide the service to people who need the service, obviously, as we know that. We want to get them to our facilities. We want to support our facilities. We want it to be a great thing all around. One thing we touched on, but we haven't talked too much about, I don't think, is economic development within our community. So I saw it up on the screen there earlier on that that is one lens through which we look at, or that was the yellow slide that had all the bullet points on it. That is one lens through which we look at deciding what our routes are, facilitate economic development, support workforce development. And the mayor and Councillor Pachariva pointed out that the stop at Union Road is a big take-up, and for good reason. So I want to make sure that we continue to do that, because that's extremely important, especially to our tourism industry, that we are able to supply labor workforce to our tourism industry. And it helps people that need, the better the tourism industry is, the more likely we're going to have the more we support it, the more likely we're going to have year-round tourism, the more likely we have once we get to having more year-round tourism, we're going to have more full-time jobs. Those people will be able to maybe afford houses, et cetera, spin off. So I just want to make sure, I'm sure you're doing it already, but that we continue to use that lens as we move forward. So I guess if you have anything to respond to that, great. But I think you've said it already. So it's a suggestion more than anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. I love the T-shirts. Give us a flash, moving transit forward. Thank you very much. Just before we go to the motion, I just want to make a couple of comments. Robert, he's my new best friend. Whenever I have nothing to do, I go for a ride. So today, I talked to Robert. I said, Robert, so tell me, since the calendar's changed, what have you seen? So he told me, I've seen many new faces. I said, what do you mean? He said, the people that were riding in 2018, it's like they've disappeared. I'm seeing a whole new group of people. I go, wow, why is that? He goes, I don't know. I said, are you still seeing predominantly 71%, I didn't say 71, 3/4 female? He said, yes. He said, they're going to do grocery shopping. And he indicated to me that his biggest indicator that this is still not being, the knowledge that we have transit is these new people are coming saying, I would have been here, but I didn't know about it. I just found out. He also said that there are a lot more youth riding ULink in 2019 than they did in 2018. I really appreciate Councillor Russell's and Councillor Mikulec's comments. They're new councillors, and I'd be asking the same question that you guys asked tonight. But I can tell you that, when we sat in Grimsby 3 or 4 years ago, what we heard was that, they were looking at free ridership. They did a couple of small pilots, and whenever they introduced a fare, people stopped coming during that pilot. And the minute it was free, people embraced it. You look at Pelham, and yes, Pelham is $3 today. But if you talk to anybody up in Pelham, and I'd be glad to give you the contact information, the people that are involved in the Pelham Red Cross bus and the model that they took, they were light years behind our ridership in the first 2 years. And yes, they're $3 today, but we're really only a year into this. We didn't launch it until November. So I really do, to the mayor's comment, I do believe we need to continue to keep the pedal to the metal here, and we need to continue to look at all these different things like on demand, and whether it's Lyft or whether it's Uber, and how we can look at other options. I do want to make a comment before we move on to the motion that our CAO, because there was a lot of discussion regarding the regional intermunicipal, so there is going to be a CAO committee that's being formed. I think the first meeting is this Friday. And our CAO will be part of that governance. Did you want to make a comment, Mr. Kirkopoulos?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that opportunity. I will be joining the CAOs from Niagara Falls, Welland, and St. Catharines as a member of that subcommittee. And I think for a lot of reasons I was asked to participate in that, both as a representative from West Niagara, but also in that Lincoln has launched a system. And transit is something that this council has supported. And so I will be on that committee. We have our kickoff meeting Friday morning at 9 o'clock. And it really is to look at governance and what that model for transit will look like in Niagara moving forward. So great that I've heard these comments. I think it's absolutely important for me to hear them, and for me then to further relay them on Friday morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Last comment I wanted to make is I think if we recall when we had the GO Bus stop at the bottom of Ontario Street, at the beginning we weren't having a lot of ridership. One of the things that we did was we put an enclosure there so people could be out of the elements, out of the rain, out of the snow. I think it's something we need to be cognizant of when Councillor Mikulec talks about ridership being down. When I spoke to Robert today, he indicated to me that yes, ridership was down, but let's not forget, I think we had in the months of January and February, we had 6 school closures with ice and snow. So it was a bit of a difficult winter for climate and people getting around. So I think we have to be cognizant that we have to make sure from a public works standpoint that we're keeping those stops clear and shoveled, and maybe we have to do a couple of our key stops and we have to put some enclosures moving forward, but those are all things that we can consider as we move forward. Thank you very much for your presentation. So we now have a motion to receive and file the Public Works Report, PW 07-19, regarding an update of the ULink Transit Pilot Service for 2018 and Q1 2019. We will require a mover for the motion. Councillor Pachariva will be our mover. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. We will now consider item 7.3, PW 08-19, the 2019 Road Reconstruction Program. Councillor McPherson always loves colored maps, so I ask that we get colored maps. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council regarding this road reconstruction program? Councillor Pachariba.
Thank you, Chair Brunet. Just a question to Mr. Graham with respect to the asphalt paving program. Drake, Marguerite, Cameron, Dufferin, Academy, I think 23rd Street were all part of the construction plan in 2018. So seeing this as like the top asphalt, so haven't we already paid for this? And wondering why it would be included. So are we shortfalling ourselves?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, a good question to flag. The answer is the budget is from those previous years, so we've carried the budget forward. What we're trying to do here is stick to our principles to optimize our contracts and economies of scale. So the tender we're awarding tonight includes that work, because we're trying to get as much paving as we can get done in one tender to achieve good bidding, opposed to leaving that paving in this specific each job. So you're not short-cutting yourself at all with your 2019 budget.
Okay.
That was approved as part of those previous projects.
Okay.
We're actually saving money because we've put them in one big program to implement.
Okay, and if I may, through you, Chair Bernat, probably to Mr. Graham again, and I don't want to steal Councillor McPherson's thunder, but I'm going to if he's got this question coming. So, having driven around lately in our municipality, Cherry Avenue, Aberdeen, we've got some roads that are in Philp Road. Horrific state. So, wondering when we might be getting that 10-year capital plan so we can see specifically where they are and feeding into the budget discussions we're going to have in June and get some input and get them on the radar. So when we start receiving those calls, and if we haven't, because I'm already getting them, we can say it's going to happen next year, or you're on the list.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, absolutely, we want to get that information to council. Staff is working on updating that, so I think it would be good timing to bring back a map, an updated map with the current road program.
Okay.
Looking out, especially as you move into budget, it'll help give you some ideas on what roads are happening when, so for sure that'll be coming.
And then too, like there seems to be some problematic areas. A Durham Road across from the old Parker facility, Cherry Avenue in between the two wineries. Like these are just constant points of failure. So there's an underlying, and I mean it's geographic or geologic that's causing these roads to continually fail in the same situations. So we just can't keep doing what we're doing and expect it to come out differently, so.
Through Mr. Chairman, if I may, for sure, I mean, before we invest a lot of capital dollars in those roads, we want to make sure that we address that underlying problem, like whether it's road-based drainage or whatnot, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
because I appreciate that, because, I mean, you know, the talk of climate change and, you know, the release of you know, the change in climate and the story the other night on 60 Minutes, you know, that Canada's warming up. You know, the story on 60 Minutes addressed Russian permafrost and how it's changing, and that there's so much carbon locked in there that it's going to be a carbon bomb that's going to be released, something that we've never seen. But knowing that we're warming, knowing that we've got a climate specialist on there, you know, how we're going to do things in the future to mitigate, you know, fire and flood and every other sort of petulance might be reaped upon us. Thank you for your word. Yes, yeah. I hope, hopefully no locusts.
Whoa.
We lived through Flyville, yes.
Any other questions? I don't see anything on my screen here. Okay.
Other people to speak.
Mayor Easton.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do need a little bit more information on this issue of the model, because in the last budget, near the end of, I think maybe we were into year 2, maybe year 3, we had a conversation about every, you know, the same model. You know, it wasn't one solution for all roads. But I haven't heard anything more about that, and I was actually expecting that before we did anything this year, that we were going to be talking about what needed to be done in certain areas, because we know that our roads have very, very poor bases. In all those years when we were getting, you know, 75 cents on the dollar, when you look at that chart, when you see that $2 or $3 million that we were getting from the province every year, a lot of that money was going into roads, and we were just putting it on top of what was there. So most of the roads don't have any base, and that's probably why we're having continual problems. So are we making a decision to deliberately go forward and do the same thing? Or are we actually planning to start rebuilding some roads? And I thought actually that we were going to be making that decision this year. I might have been dreaming, but I
No,
thought that's
no,
what
you're
was
not
gonna
dreaming.
happen.
We've had that discussion, and Director Graham, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, we haven't changed path by all means from where we were when we completed the most recent road needs study back in 2017. We developed a lot of principles that we're going to work towards. If you recall, we're investing, trying to save our good roads from getting worse from an asset management strategy, but we're also rehabilitating the bad roads and upgrading those bases to a proper standard before we just put a surface on top of them. So, you know, our program is in 2 pieces. So where we're doing, example, we're repaving roads to seal them up, and those roads are still okay to invest in. And then the other roads we're rehabilitating, so we're adding granular to the base of those roads, making them stronger, because we don't want to invest you know, money in putting surfaces on roads that don't have the proper base. So, I mean, we can, I think moving forward as we approach the budget and the 10-year plan, we can share more of that information with council. We are continuing to develop, when we did our most recent road needs study, we had a, excuse me, a road optimization software program that does modeling. So staff are working on continuing to develop that to help us with our road decision-making, and we use that tool. It's a very useful tool because it's science-based, and it really helps us to determine when to invest in the road at the right time and to do it properly with the right strategy.
Okay, so that's very helpful, Mr. Chairman. And because it seems to me, and this would be a question for Mr. Graham. In 2013, the road surface integrity in the town of Lincoln was at what percent? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through Mr. Chairman, so initially it was around, I think I want to say about 58%, and what that meant is your overall network average was 58% as its condition. And then Since 2013, we've adopted a lot of good strategies with keeping our good roads good and trying to build our roads properly. Council's been very supportive, which we are very thankful of as staff, in providing us more funding opportunities, because we weren't investing enough money in our roads prior to that either to really stay ahead of things or to try and catch up. So at the last road needs study in 2017, we raised our overall condition of our network by about 10%. So I think we were sitting around 68% was our overall condition of our entire network. So that would include brand-new roads and roads that are falling apart, so on an average. So it was good progress, for sure.
Okay, great. I mean, this is great news. So when you look at the number of roads that we have, 335 kilometers, I guess it is, it takes us, at one time, we were able to do 33 kilometers a year. That's what my belief was, but now I'm beginning to wonder whether I had that number wrong, because I can't believe that we've dropped down to 12.9 intentionally, because I always operated on the assumption that it took us 10 years to get it done, and then we'd be starting again. We still have some pretty nasty roads out there. So is this number dropping, this 12.9 number?
Through Mr. Chairman, good question. I think, if you compare maybe some of the earlier programs, we were doing a lot more tar and chip only, if that's maybe a good example, if I could use that. So tar and chip is a more economical way to resurface a road in some of our rural roads. The program, I think, has evolved over the last number of years, where we're trying to do more urban roads and not just rural roads. Okay, so if we're doing urban roads, we're doing asphalt, hot mix asphalt, it's more costly, so, you can't get that same quantity of kilometers done as a tar and chip road. So I think you're seeing some of that, and that's okay. And we do have some, looking into our future with some of our rural roads, there's some that are gonna be costly because we have to bring them up to an asphalt surface. The traffic volumes are higher, and we just can't tar and chip those roads. So I think it really depends. You want to keep your expenditures at the same level and continue to grow that. And sometimes your kilometers of road is going to be different depending on the types of roads in that particular program, whether you're using more asphalt that particular program or more tar and chip, for example. So I don't know if that helps.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, this information is very valuable because, the detail of how the roads are done, I'm a pretty good judge of road work, because counselors were taught about road work when I was a counselor in the first instance. So I know what's happening when the equipment is out there. So the question now is this. So if we're doing 12.9 kilometers, and we had a woman at Vineland that came in, I think Mr. Graham and I met with her, and she would not let us out of the room of that meeting until we committed to her that we were going to start spending money on urban roads. She'd really had enough of, roads not getting any attention until it was time to do the pipes under the ground. So the question now, and I feel I want to include this in the discussion, is when we start talking about the budget for 2020, we do need to talk about having maybe we're going to have to get some more momentum going here, because there's too many bad roads that we still have on our hands. So are we going to add more to the infrastructure fund so that we can separate out the urban and the rural, so that we can get more control over it? I feel right now that it's not quite sustainable what we're doing, because we're lagging a bit with our investment. I wouldn't say it's a small investment, but it's just the reality of getting all of the work done so that you can begin again. So I'd like to just hear, some brief comments, and hopefully we'll be talking about this again. But this is the year, I think, that we need to grab a hold of this and say the model has to change, or the sustainability, the investment has to change, or something about this that's not quite right. And I'd like to see a much more robust discussion on it. I don't know how Mr. CAO would suggest that we do that.
Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think Director Graham wants to provide a comment, and then I can add to that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a great discussion to have as we move forward to budget. I mean, I think it's important that we do include urban roads in this program. And again, we're making smart choices with these urban roads in this program and future programs where we make sure the pipes under that road are good. And we're not paving over bad pipes, so you have that reassurance. But I think, we're gonna look for council support during the budget process, because we're gonna have some, roads come forward, Councilor Patrieva was talking about Aberdeen and roads like that. They're gonna need a little more work than maybe just what we typically do with some of our surface treatment roads. In the rural area, these roads will be asphalt roads, so we may have to look at, if we have some more expensive roads that come into the program, about increasing that budget to help keep things moving forward overall.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I realize that we are here to talk about this contract, but in fact, we haven't had a chance to discuss this issue. So if there is another opportunity to do that as part of the capital budget process, or as another committee of the whole, I would welcome that, because I think this is a really important, this is an important item. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think if I could add to Director Graham's comments, I think one of the things that we've committed to, and our hope is to come back to June committee to talk to you about the 10-year capital plan. I think dovetailing to that conversation, we can definitely look at what sort of supplementary information we can bring forward. And I'd want to add that the importance of the asset management plan that we have, that will also inform how we make investments in municipal infrastructure and how we look at the long-term sustainability of our program. So last term of council, you were very focused on sustainability and making those necessary financial investments, and so that's why we saw that special infrastructure levy and the continuation of that infrastructure levy. So those are the things that I think are important when we look at the sustainability of the program. But yeah, absolutely, we can come back, share more information in terms of the decision matrix, and what that looks like when we look at tar and chip and particular road applications versus more of the urban roads that we're now starting to see and that are coming up as priorities when we look at just the prioritization within the asset management plan. So we can definitely come to you when we're here in June and maybe bring some complementary reports together.
Councilor Patrieva.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. And just to follow up on the mayor's comments there, and Mr. Kirkopoulos too. Hopefully in June, when we're looking at the 10-year capital plan, we might take a look at that talking asset management plan, at that thing that we've seen at AMO the last 2 years, the truck that actually goes around and does a scientific analysis of your road network, not only your road network, your sidewalks, your signage, the whole gamut. And then, your dollars are put in and it's printed out, because, we undertook that exercise of doing the asphalt pavement strips a number of years ago. But the problem with that is they're good for a certain amount of years, and then the tar and chip or the extra asphalt needs to go over top, and they need, they can't be left in perpetuity. And, Green Lane is a perfect example. The shoulders are failing, so we're no further ahead in where we were. So, and again, we're gonna do this at a future focus, but I think it's an opportunity to bring it up now, having come out of the election, and John Q. Public that lives on Smith Lane that says, well, my road hasn't been done in 40 years. And we had that Mrs. Van Bentham come in from Vineland saying, okay, we need to develop a shave and pave where the infrastructure is still good for for another 20 years under the surface of the road. We can't stick our head in the sand and not do that road. So I look forward to having that fulsome discussion with the 10-year capital plan, with the asset management plan, with ways that we're going to do things differently. You know, I take great faith in that presentation last week on 19th Street and Main Street on cutting-edge technologies. I look forward to those coming forward at that meeting. And you know, cement is another surface that we need to investigate for things like Union. So I look forward to that.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I am pleased that the mayor has brought this up because, you know, going back to when we got together in 2014, we made a very significant increase in the dollars that were being spent from the previous term of council. When we went out knocking on doors at that time, you know, the number one thing that we were hearing was about the roads. And I think we took it from $1 million or something, and I think we pretty much doubled the investment each year. And I too, you know, was of the thinking that we were looking at a 10-year turnaround for each of our roads. And maybe just was you know, that particular year, we did 33 kilometers, but, you know, I would say, you know, this speaks to me that we need to have more fulsome discussions around urbanizing roads because, you know, we can do a number of kilometers out in the urban area, but when we talk about an urbanization, it's millions. It's millions. So you know, and I've been down this road before about urban versus rural, and you know, how do we manage that? So, you know, I'm in for a discussion around what is a multi-year plan, and what kind of investment do we need to make? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All good discussion. I completely agree with the mayor, but I do believe that, I'll tell you, if I was a councillor in Vineland, I'd be over the moon right now. You know, you've got that whole section of Heritage Village. Heritage Village is how old?
30, Mr. Chairman, 30, maybe 30?
So we're going in there, and if you look at that little section there, that little area on Culp Road, we're going in there, we're doing that whole area. And, you know, in terms of somebody being happy in Vineland, I mean, 2nd Avenue, Station Street, Culp Road, 23rd, I mean, there's a lot of hot mix asphalt being done here. I realize we're not doing the kilometers, but we're putting a ton of asphalt down, and I really take my hat off to Director Graham this year for having the foresight to separate these two contracts. I do believe for the last couple of years, we've been taken advantage of in terms of the contract with the emulsion, where there's one bidder and then he turns around and subs it and marks it up. So Director Graham, hats off for breaking up this contract to the hot mix asphalt and the emulsion contract. So we have a motion to receive and file report PW 08-19 for the 2019 Capital Road Resurfacing and Rehabilitation Project Award. To approve the contract award for the 2019 asphalt paving program to Brennan Paving Limited for the amount of $528,884.40 as outlined in the report. To approve the contract report for the 2019 Rural Road Rehabilitation Program tender to Norjohn Contracting and Paving Limited for the amount of $854,114.75 as outlined in the report. To approve the mayor and the town clerk to sign and seal the contract documents on behalf of the municipality. We will require a mover for the motion. Councillor Timmers will move that motion. All in favor? And that is passed. Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. We are now considering item, this will be 7.4, PW 09-19, the tandem dump truck snowplow purchase. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive and file report PW-09-19, the 2019 tandem dump truck snowplow purchase. To approve contract 1 tandem dump truck snowplow to Metro Freightliner in the amount of $296,736.40 plus HST. We We will require a mover for that motion. Councillor Rinjima, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. That is carried. We will now consider item 7.5, PW-10-19, the Second Avenue water main replacement and road reconstruction. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive and file the report PW-10-19 for the Second Avenue Water Main Replacement and Road Reconstruction Project Award, to approve the contract for the Second Avenue Water Main Replacement and Road Reconstruction Project for the tender amount of $724,944.50, excluding HST, to Alpha Dome Construction Niagara, and approve the firm of Cole Engineering Group Limited to be retained to provide engineering services at a cost of $50,080, and approve the mayor and the town clerk to sign and seal the contract documents on behalf of the municipality. We require a mover for the motion. Councillor Russell will move that motion. All in favor? And that is carried. We are now considering item 7.6, PW-11-19, the town-wide meter replacement and AMI installation project. Ms. Harris will provide a presentation. Welcome, Jillian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council. I'd just like to provide a bit of a presentation overview of the report, because it is a significant project for our group. So I'd like to go over the agenda. Will be providing a bit of project background, identifying the project goals and business drivers that came through over the past few years of this project, the proposed meter reading technology, and then highlight the customer portal, the project benefits, the financials, next steps, and then address any questions there may be. So for the project background, in 2017, it was identified that approximately 5,600 meters were actually past their service life. Despite training and numerous meetings with the reading company, the monthly response was actually, with the company that goes out and does all the readings at each individual house, the monthly response was declining and impacting water operations and billing. You might recall from the, when I did my annual report, we were doing about 1,800 secondary reads last year. In 2018, we did retain a consultant to assist with the design stage and really help the town develop what were our business drivers and what technology we should be going out there looking for, what is the best solution for Lincoln. And we did create a steering committee, which included Public Works, Finance, IT, and we also did liaise with the communications group as well, obviously for public outreach and that portion of it as well. So we did identify the project goals and key business drivers, and we were able to develop and issue an RFP in Q4 2018, just because it is projects like these actually have a much longer RFP and negotiation phase as well. There's a number of steps that go through projects of this sort. It is a unique project. So to go over the project goals and business drivers, one of the major goal was the elimination of manual meter reading and transitioning to AMI technology. It is important to note that when we did go out to the consultants, it was a borderline thought of, are we going to go AMR, which would involve a truck having to drive by to collect all the readings, kind of on a monthly or 3-month basis, and AMI provides more instantaneous reads, similar to what a number of hydro meters are like. The completion of the project within 10 months, we wanted to have the lowest impact to the impacts to finance. Also, we didn't want to drag it out for the residents. We want to try and make sure that whatever company we're bringing in has a large team, a proven team that would be able to do it in a fast amount of time and be able to provide that service. Proven system reliability is obviously a large item. We don't want to make this investment and not have proof that the system that we're installing can work and can work, most importantly, when we need it. And then also consider a reliable long-term supplier partner to support the product supply requirements post-project. So not just focusing on who can provide the service to us over the 10-month period of installation, but also what does 15 years down the road look like, and what will that agreement look like. And then also project and ongoing system support and product training for town staff was also important. The business drivers were to improve meter reading reliability, detect, register, and cut wiring projects that are problems. So that's where sometimes they can be tampered with to try and reduce costs sometimes, or just sometimes also in error. Reduce regular meter reading costs. Provide same-day read, so this would be if someone's moving at the end of the time, if there's any disputes, we'd be able to obtain those same-day read information. Also do proactive leak detection alerts, so leak detection meaning within the home, so if someone has a leaky toilet or even the ability of these systems would be if someone left a tap running earlier in the day, being able to get alerts of something happening and being able to advise our residents of when there is kind of a change in their consumption in advance of. Right now, we can only provide it at a 3-month mark, so it's a little bit, it's very, very delayed now, so to try and be a bit more reactive. And then to be able to do customer consumption analysis, including the customer portal, so making sure that everything is tracked, and then the customer can also be proactive in monitoring their consumption as well. Ensuring that we have a dynamic water balance, so we always present what our water losses are. This will allow us to do a bit more real-time looks, or more on a monthly basis in a more accurate mean. Also ability on top of it to detect backflow events, so when water's flowing the opposite way on the meter itself. And then the ability for residents to do vacation monitoring. So they, similar to how you would set up if you're going somewhere to kind of pause your mail and they're aware of that, you'd also be able to do a notification that there's a pause. So should be expecting a zero water usage, and then obviously if something is happening, then we'd be able to provide that added service if we did see something different. So the proposed meter reading technology, I apologize for blocking off that section with the image of what that image is the reader of the signals that would go on a tower. So during the project, it was, as I noted, it was to identify that advanced meter infrastructure, or AMI, or fixed towers was the preferred option, as opposed to a truck driving around grabbing readings. This did allow for near real-time response and improves customer service. It reduces our reading costs and allows for alarms for high water consumption, backflow events, and tampering of the meters. So the meters that will be installed will be matching the existing meters that we've been installing over the past few years through the Neptune Technology Group, and Evans Supply Limited, who is our current supplier, would continue to be our supplier as the outcome of this proposal. So the customer portal is an exciting factor. We did include it as a provisional item, but the more we started looking at things, it was something that we really wanted to bring forward to the residents in the community. As I said, it's good for being proactive. It allows them to monitor it in real time. It's not the surprise at 3 months when you have a high water bill. So you can take things in advantage, especially during summer months where people will be watering lawns, other items like that. You can be cognizant of that. But also, if you do have situations where you do have a leaky faucet or a leaky toilet or something like that, it will let you know when when you might have an alarm for that, and it will actually also take you through how-tos of how to pinpoint where those leaks might be coming in your house and walking them through. So it's another customer service measure. It's a lot easier to look at some visuals rather than having to try and explain it over the phone sometimes. So it just provides that added touch as well. So this is showing, we'd still have our regular bills that would be going out. The cell phone, the customer would be able to set it up themselves to get text alerts of when something did go off. And then they could also look at it on a computer platform. So this isn't something that we necessarily, we're not planning on rolling it out right away. We want to make sure that we have everything installed, bringing it forward, that we have all of our system in place, and then be rolling out the customer portal within a couple years of completing the install and having everything online. We just want to make sure that we have everything set before we do bring it out so that it is a smooth transition out to the customers. So the project benefits from the town perspective is the improved reading, also the reduction of losses associated with inaccurate reads, which is quite significant right now, improved customer service, and then it actually increases our knowledge of the system. So it increases be able to do real-time evaluation of where key pockets are truly using the bulk of water, and then trying to optimize or even plan some of our regular maintenance procedures to consider these aspects. From a customer perspective, it's easy options for booking water meter installation. So the company itself, we're using Neptune, not exaggerating whatsoever. They have installed over 1 million meters. They have handled the replacement of every single meter within the city of Toronto. So they can definitely handle the booking and installation and have qualified staff to handle our slightly smaller size. Then there's also the portal available to the residents to monitor their water usage in between billing periods. So again, they don't have to wait for the 3-month to see if it is going to be a high bill or to be notified about some high water usage. Also, as I noted, supporting videos and documents to identify sources of water leaks within the home is a great feature for our residents. And then again, able to set alarm notifications for high consumptions or other concerns, and then just general tips and tricks about water usage, water conservation, and just kind of adjusting your daily usage as well. So for the financial information, the design phase, the contract was awarded for just over $90,000. The RFP price. The winning price was just under $2.3 million. We have contract administration and site inspection from our consultant, Diameter Services, at around $225,000. We do have a contingency. It is a relatively high percentage. This is due because we do have to go into every single home within the town, and unfortunately we don't know exactly what the wiring is like. There's also going to be some situations where people finished off basements, they've drywalled over, so we're going to have to locate the meter, do a repair, create a box over top of the meter to bring it up to how it should be, because unfortunately some people do. It's a fact that renovations do happen in between. Bringing our total estimated costs per year to just over 2.8, or for the project to just over $2.8 million. And then our estimated savings per year are actually $430,000. That takes into account the losses in missed revenue by inaccurate meter reads, plus the cost that we've been experiencing from our reads itself. So the return on investment is excellent for this project. So the meters that we're installing have a 25-year life, 20 to 25-year life, I should update that. So our initial capital cost, we actually have just over a 5-year ROI. So that allows us to reinvest within our reserves, and then also be in an excellent shape for the next time that we'd have to go through a similar project. We'd actually be able to save up those 3 additional times within it, considering a 20-year lifespan. So the next steps would be, assuming approval, would be contract award, AMI preparation and installation in Q2 of 2019. We anticipate meter installations to begin in July 2019 with a significant public information outreach portion kind of within the Q2 and leading up to July. And with project completion, all meters were placed in and around February 2020. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation, Jillian. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Patriva.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Exciting report. Yeah, well, no. This is good, Jillian. This is good. Just a question with respect to the AMI technology and the panels, or I think you called them something else.
Oh, the receivers?
The receivers. How many of the, what's the, and I know this is probably a weedy question, but it intrigues me. The sphere of the reach of those. So how many do they need to install, and where might they install them? Are they going to go on telephone poles, or if a little bit more on that, if you wouldn't mind?
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair. Excellent question. We anticipate approximately 5 receivers to go in. We would likely be able to do it with probably 2 if we did not have our bench and lower level. And also, one thing that I think makes Lincoln excellent, trees get in the way of signals sometimes. So that has proven why we have had to go up to 5. We are utilizing existing towers and being able to do that. We may have to install 1 more tower, more so the provision that we want to make sure that Prudhome's is covered. We're just being proactive and making sure that we won't have any issues when Prudhome's comes online, and being able to capture that. And that's a sightline issue with some of the trees in the area. And that's the one area where we may have to install a new pole, but existing poles will be used, or existing towers that we're using. And that would just be mounted on top and look exactly like the other items that are going on. So we wouldn't be adding any more.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Through you to Jillian. Thank you, Jillian, for the report. It's a lot of money. It took me off guard. How are we funding that? Is that through our water reserves?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it's 100% through our water reserves. And as I said, it would be 5 years, and we would fully restore those reserves within 5 years.
Okay, and the 5 years, like the savings, the amount that we're going to save, is that taking into account the losses from the inaccurate reading?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, is taking into account the losses. It's also, when we did the savings, we anticipated what the cost for reads would be, but also what we're currently spending on our annual reads. So it's a combination of those 2 items.
Okay, I thought so. I just wanted to be clear on that. And the meters, the new meters that we're, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, the new meters that we're putting in will be, they're good for 20 to 25 years. But if one breaks at 2 years, is it replaced, and how long are they replaced for?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We have, they do all have a warranty. It's it's kind of like buying a car. It's 10-year warranty on certain portions of it, lifetime warranty on other portions of it. We can also, one of the things that we've had in discussions is option for some prorating aspects. But we, as part of this project, we also did require them to provide a price for 15 years. So we would allow for inflation on top of that, but we did lock into a base rate for meters. And then we'd only have inflation on that over the next 15 years as well. So we did protect ourselves in that sense, but for the next 10 years, it would be a full replacement.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Councillor Michalak.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. Through you to Jillian. Councillor Timmers touched a little bit on what I was going to ask with regards to these meters and the dependability or the reliability and the expected life expectancy of them. So they look like a pretty high-tech sort of meter. Are they still capable of being traditional? Should Neptune go out of business, or should the other provider, AMI system, should they fail to remain in business?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So Neptune is actually the largest meter supplier in North America. They're also one of the oldest meter suppliers in North America. The guts of the meter haven't changed too much over the years. We didn't go with the higher tech option. The meter that we have is it's their tried and true. It's like the cars that have the engines that just last forever. We did spec out going a similar meter to that. And again, Neptune has been around for as long as metering has been around, and they are the largest metering company. So it's not anticipated. The other thing that was written into the scope was that whatever was provided had to be able to be adaptable to other technologies if need be. So again, because it's not a big industry, there's not a lot of players out there, they do try to play well together just to make themselves more appealing to other municipalities. So it is, if something does happen to Neptune, which is highly unlikely, it would not be as large of an investment if we did have to switch out some items.
So, just another question. Do we have, does Neptune or does AMI, do they have data on the fail rate of their systems?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to note Neptune is the provider of everything. So it's AMI and through. So to answer the question, Neptune's meters, it's over a 95% life, like through their 2025 lifespan. You normally see it hitting more on that 25 side. It's actually the where you'll start to see some of the issues is in the transmitter. You'll start to see, because there is a battery in that, that's where the life starts to be around that 20 to 25 year mark. And there is, they are very good at retaining their customers. I guess that's the best way to answer the reliability aspect. In most of their customers maintain on their reading systems, and it has the AMI side of it, and AMR side of it has been down in the States for over 10 years, and they do have quite a large team that focuses on that.
Great. And just one more, just through you, Mr. Chair. The reason why I'm asking these questions is it's similar like with this new technology that we are presented. I just don't want it to be something like my cell phone or something like the remote control I have, and I don't know how to use, half the things that I have to the fullest of their ability, and to have this new technology and then possibly have it be outdated in 3-4 years, that would be, to me, an expense that would trouble me a bit. However, that being said, having a return on investment expected savings, then that makes me feel better about this expenditure.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I completely agree with that. And the one nice thing about it is that this is like the hardware aspect of it. The software is typically what gets updated the most on your phones. There's some small aspects of the hardware, but overall meters have not changed too much, and it's just a radio frequency. So it's in that background. We'll all, as part of our annual costs, we will be getting those software updates.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Councillor Rinjima.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. So a little later on in your report, I read it last night, but you're talking about the communications aspect of this, because we've all heard, there's been people going door to doors and misrepresenting themselves and pretending to be somebody they're not, pretending they're from the town, trying to get in people's houses. So this is going to be a big deal. There's going to be a lot of questions. So one thing we can do, I know, maybe if we can have some sort of a communication, Councillor Russell and I are having a ward meeting in May, and we can talk about that and at least get the word out in that way. So maybe if you can just run through some of the communications and education initiatives that you're going to be undertaking.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I know Carrie will be fully developed, or Carrie and Leanne will be developing that program further, but we will be doing public information centers, kind of one on each side. It's also important to note that while it is a 10-month, we're not sending out letters. There won't be notifications going out to everyone all at once. We will be phasing it, and we will be highlighting that in our initial response as well. But there will be a letter going out from the town to everyone with a water meter, advising of this program coming forward, advising that we will be doing public information centers. We will be utilizing the newspapers, social media, our website, PICs, and mail-outs as well. So trying to kind of a little bit of every avenue that we do have to spread that word that this program is coming out, that we are working with Neptune to try and spread that. And we will be doing training with all of our CSRs as well to advise of that. And all the councillors will receive information packages with what is anticipated to be the frequently asked questions as well.
Reluctantly, I go back to Councillor Patriva.
No, just a quick one. Just a quick one, Chair Brunei, and it's Councillor Renjima's fault. Just wondering if those notifications going to go out in the water bill.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is one of the options that is being discussed with Carrie right now.
Thank you, Jillian. They say that water and infrastructure is not sexy, but when you look at return on investment for less than 5 years, we look at what we did with the streetlight conversion and the money we spent there and the money we're seeing savings. I'm glad that we're moving forward with this, because the money we're spending on manual readings and the loss of water is not acceptable. So this is a big undertaking, make no bones about it. Like, I'm surprised we're getting it done in 10 months, like 5,600 meters, and the communication and the coordination of going into people's houses. But it sounds like we've got the best of the best in North America, so good luck with the project.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, Port Colborne also did, I just want to add, Port Colborne used Neptune for their installation as well, and they were able to do all of their points within 8 months. So it is anticipated that we will be able to meet our 10-month period.
Excellent. So we have a motion to receive and file PW-11-19, the town-wide meter replacement and AMI installation project award, and approve the company of Neptune Technology Group to be retained to supply and install equipment at a cost of $2,280,160.58, and approve the firm of Diameter Services to be retained to supply contract administration and site inspection, and approve the mayor and clerk to sign and seal contract documents on behalf of the municipality. I require a motion, a mover. Councillor Pachariva, thank you. All in favor? And that is unanimous, thank you. We are now considering item 7.7, CS-05-19, Grow, Prosper, Belong Community Fund. Hoping everyone has read this document from Shannon and Community Services. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Brunei. I don't really have a question, just a couple of comments. I was really pleased to see this come forward, and I like it. I like the Grow, Prosper, Belong Fund. I think it's perfect. I also like the structure, the way we're going to look at the different groups, the way that the money will be decided, the application process, the criteria. It's all very, very clear, and it's something that we needed to do for a long time. So I'm really happy to see that. I also like the idea of the evaluation committee, that there'll be 2 from community services, 1 from the CAO's office, 1 from finance and admin, and 1 from legislative services. I think that's a really good mix. You're pulling in all the departments, and I was just really happy to see it, and it's a great report. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any other questions? Mayor Easton.
Mr. Chairman, my question is regarding page 59 and the list about what the town will not fund. I think it's the 4th bullet point, regional, provincial, and national events. I'm just thinking about the Canada Summer Games, and I just want to make sure that there wouldn't be any secondary activities going on where one of our teams might be involved. I'm not sure exactly what this means. I just want to make sure that we won't get caught.
Okay, Shannon or Sarah, did you want to make a comment on that, or just make a notation of the mayor's? Miss Ain.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. If you'll look at that list of what we're proposing the town does not fund, and this is for your consideration, certainly. We do have 2 bullet points, one about regional, provincial, and national events, as well as travel expenses for teams to compete outside of Lincoln. So trying to keep the money here in the community for events here in the community is a priority for us. With respect to the Canada Games, I do suspect, and Shannon and I have both been involved recently with conversations with the games at a municipal forum, that any involvement we have would be an additional ask outside of this fund. It wouldn't really tie into Grow, Prosper, Belong. So we're aware that there will be work needed to support the games and potentially some local athletes as well, upgrades maybe to some facilities. There's going to be a whole host of things we have to consider, but I really don't think it will tie into this particular fund, so we don't anticipate it being a concern.
Okay. I'm just fine, Mr. Chairman, until I began to wonder if youth teams would somehow be involved in the Canada Summer Games, which would require them to have new uniforms or some other element of it. So that's fine. I'm satisfied with that. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we have a motion to receive the information. Oh, before I say that, I want to make a comment that when I sat down to do the agenda review, it appeared that even though these reports might to us seem simplistic, I got the impression that there's a lot of work that went into both of these. So I know Shannon was quite proud of these documents, so I just wanted to recognize that. We have a motion to receive for information and approve Report CS-05-19 regarding Lincoln's amended, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Oh, no, I'm right. Receive for information and approve CS-05-19 regarding Lincoln's amended grant policy administered by the Community Services Department, and approve the adoption of Grow, Prosper, Belong Fund as the grant's main funding stream in the updated community grant policy. We will require a motion, and I have a mover. It will be Councillor Timmers. All in favor? And that is passed. We are now considering item 7.8 CS-06-19, the Community Group Affiliation Policy. Are there any questions from council? While we're pondering that, I wanted to make a comment that already I've had a call from an organization that moves migrant workers to a church service on a Sunday. They were inquiring about the U-Link, so I think maybe under this policy they will have an opportunity to look at potentially some grant funding or something. So already there's some interest in this, and we haven't even approved it. So seeing no questions, We have a motion to receive for information Report CS-06-19 regarding the Community Group Affiliation Program, to approve the dissolution of the approved community groups listed as approved in 2016, and to approve the implementation of the Community Group Affiliation Program using the accompanying policy provisions effective May 1st, 2019. And we will require a mover for the motion. Thank you, Councillor Reimer. All in favor? And that is passed. We have no confidential items this evening. Do we have any staff remarks? Our CAO had to leave as his wife got called an emergency. Seeing none from the back. Thank you for all staff for being here this evening. Do we have any committee remarks? Seeing none, there be no further business. I call this meeting adjourned.